musician, dancer, you name it, he does it. One of the top figures on the entertainment scene, ladies and gentlemen, Roy Castle.
Rubbish!
Welcome to the programme.
Rubbish!
Never mind the opposition, Roy. Sit down, take courage in both hands, and put your question.
What is the worst single heckle that members of the team have ever experienced?
What is the worst single heckle that members of the team have ever experienced?
We're all too modest to admit we've had it. There was the lady vocalist in the old music halls who was doing her best. She was singing her heart out, and she was getting the bird terribly. Everyone was booing and hissing her, and a fellow eventually stood up and said, "Shut up! Give the old cow a chance." And she said, "Thank heavens there's one gentleman in the audience."
Well, you wouldn't remember, Roy, but there was a war, do you see?
Oh.
And during this war...
Were those Zeppelins very big?
I don't know much about that one, but in this last one, it was always my great fear that somebody in the audience would say, "Why aren't you in the forces?" Because I registered with the 26s, and I looked much younger than that then, because after all, I only look a child now. So there was this drunken sailor who came up, reeled up to the orchestra rail in a packed house at Chiswick Empire, and he said, "Why aren't you in the forces?" I found myself saying, "If you come round to the stage door, I'll show you my operation." And it got a round of applause, and he came round to the stage door, and I showed him my operation. We've been friends for years.
The greatest recovery that I've ever heard of a moment that completely interrupted an act happened to the American comedian Joey Bishop, who was appearing in Las Vegas. And he'd gone out and had just begun to register with the audience when suddenly Marilyn Monroe, the late Marilyn Monroe, looking at her most beautiful, came in at the door. The spotlight swung off Joey Bishop onto her, and she undulated her way down between the tables in a gown that was cut so low you could see her toenail polish.
Funny place to wear toenail polish.
And the entire audience, having had its attention taken off Joey Bishop, the comedian, for 30 seconds, watched her settle. The spotlight swung back to him. There was a long pause, and he said, "I thought I told you to wait in the truck."
Well, I did have it during my early days and struggling days in show business. I was doing I think it was a rugby cover. It was an all-male audience anyway. And I started to tell a story, and they said, "We've heard it, we've heard it, we've heard it." So it rather threw me, you see, but I started to collect my senses, and eventually one fellow at the back said, "I haven't heard it, Arthur." So I thought, good for you. I'll tell the story to you. So I started ploughing through this story. It was rather a long one. And as I was just getting to me tag, this same fellow said, "Oh, Arthur, sorry, I have heard it."
Jim, you're the only one so far who hasn't told us what is your worst heckling moment.
They daren't heckle me. They daren't. I'd go down there and destroy them physically. And it's all very well to destroy people with verbal attacks and all the rest of it. I did have an experience. I just made my third entrance in the second act, and an American gentleman in the front row stood up and said, "Oh, God, not that guy again." and walked out, and I must confess that I was stumped.
Well, Roy, what sort of experience have you had in terms of getting heckled?
Well, there's one or two. The worst heckle I used to fear was if anybody shouted, "Get off." That's the one that's got... I never had to reply for it.
The worst thing, Mac, is the silent bird. When nobody says anything and you're ploughing away and they start to get up one by one and go out. I had that happen to me a few years ago. Eventually, the whole audience had left, but one man, and he sat there. So I thought, well, if you're going to sit and see it out, I'm going to work to you alone. And I kept on and on. And I said to him, "Are you enjoying it?" He said, "Yes, but don't be too long. I'm waiting to lock up."